I think the inbound SDR role is dying. And it's probably dead at a lot of companies already now. Just because the whole buying journey with inbound SDRs was in my opinion, a complete waste of time where you had, somebody sort of.
This episode is brought to you by Warmly. Warmly is an AI-powered GTM assistant that helps your outbound team stop wasting time and start targeting the right people at the right time. Here's the play. Your SDRs open LinkedIn, and instead of cold scrolling, they get real-time signals like who is researching solutions like yours, who just switched jobs, or who recently viewed your site. No CRM updates, no lead lists, just useful context surfaced where they already work. If you're doing outbound in 2025 and not using Warmly, you are behind. Try it for free at www.warmly.ai. In this episode of the GTM Engineering Podcast, I talked to Madhav Bhandari, Head of Marketing at Storylane. We opened with his viral budget post, a transparent breakdown of Storylane's marketing spend that cut through the usual fluff on LinkedIn. But the post was not just a stand. Madhav explained how working in public sparked real conversations, surfaced blind spots like ignoring customer marketing, and helped refine his team's entire approach. We then got into a big shift he is seeing, the slow death of inbound SDR. Madhav argues that product marketers are quietly taking over early-stage sales, powering demo-led experiences and qualification flows that do not rely on humans at all. He calls it the rise of agentic qualified leads, a blend of product and sales readiness delivered through AI-trained sales agents. We also broke down Storylane's most successful growth play, demo-led SEO. By replacing static how-to blogs with interactive product walkthroughs, they grew from 20k to 250k monthly visitors and tripled PLG revenue. No AI content, no fluff, just faster time to value for users and a completely different search experience. Here's my conversation with Madhav. All right, Madhav, welcome.
I'll be here.
So, as I was explaining, the format we have of the podcast, we have, 3 questions and we go from there. In your case, though, I would like to start a bit differently because there is something I would like to discuss before I get into any of these questions, which is I saw your post a few weeks back, and many other people saw your post about how you allocate your marketing budget at Storylane, and this post, exploded. I would like to hear, the thought process behind this. I don't know if you would call it strategy, this work in public, play. And also more specifically, why do you think is that posts like this make people tick as much and, engage and interact and create this chatter, right?
Yeah. So this is, I've built in public for a while. It wasn't just at Storyline, even at some of the previous companies I've done that. For this particular case, it was mainly this that, when I see my feed today with all the AI content and everything, right, people are sort of sharing a lot of, like, oh, like they're creating like this false hype. That's what I see on my feed all the time that, oh, we closed, like a year's worth of business in like this quarter, right, as compared to our previous year, or hey, we grew 5x. And then I actually got on calls with those people. I realized that the 5x growth is like 50k to 250k, which is very different from like, let's say, going from 2 million to 10 million, right? Like, so context matters a lot today, especially like everything that's going on, right? So it just came up as a conversation, I had with my CEO. I'm like, hey, listen, like the building in public would also, help us sort of reach our ICPs. Like we send to marketers and sales, right? So this would reach them, but also it's just like, it's a good way to share because like, I think ideas are great. Everybody has great ideas. Strategy is great. Everybody has great strategy. Ultimately, execution matters. So it's fine if the competitors see it or not. Like, ultimately it depends a lot on your sort of individual team strengths, how you sort of execute on it. So we weren't sort of worried about it. So it was literally a 20-minute conversation that I just sort of went with it. And really, like, we had sort of decided a couple of months back itself, like, hey, we'll also reveal our revenue. I'd been sharing like our entire sort of marketing strategy, like particular playbooks and how things were working. But the budget bit was also sort of like, that's not what, yeah, like, whenever I talk to peers, like, they would never sort of tell what sort of budget are they dealing with and all that, right? So it was also like a good sort of conversation starter. And in hindsight, it was a really great thing because I got flooded with messages. People start transparently sharing, like, hey, here's where we are at. Let's exchange notes and all that, right? So those conversations also help us sort of, especially helps me. Like, is my portfolio right? Am I spending in the right areas? Am I missing out on something? So, for example, in my budget, one one major feedback I got from a couple of CMOs is just that we're not investing in customer marketing, right? And that sort of got me into this whole thinking mode, and now we are, right? So it was just, yeah, it was sort of in a decision, and building in public always works really well in a place where everybody's just sort of giving very sort of mass numbers and everything. If you build in public, you're immediately a pattern interrupt. You get noticed, as you saw with the budget post. But I was pretty confident with any sort of numbers reveal, they always do well.
Do you see any downsides to that?
So the downside, I mean, I think maybe one is when you're so transparently sharing, there's obviously going to be, like, the internet is also like, as much as there's love as there's going to be hate, right? There's gonna people who are gonna dig into your history and sort of find some flaw somewhere here and there, right? So the internet is always a divine place. So that, I think, is one sort of thing that happens when you start transparently sharing. And then I don't think there's any other flaw. I mean, sure, our competitors know exactly where we are spending. So I am seeing competitors starting to invest into those channels as well. But like, I'm not too worried because I think when your competition starts following you, you have a very good advantage, right? Because they're not spending their time thinking at other places, right? They're following your playbook, which allows you to sort of, innovate differently in other channels as well.
That's a good point. One last question, and then we can move forward to the next topic. Regarding that is, let's say you advise an early stage company, right? Um, and the the question of whether like should we build in public, is asked to you. What would you say?
100% go for it. Like, I mean, if there's no issues on, like with the board or whatever, if you need an approval from the CEO, as long as they're all fine with it, go for it. Like, it's always going to pay off really well. And it doesn't matter at what scale your company is at. Even if you're sharing sort of, when you're at like 100K ARR revenue, that's amazing too, right? Like, it's a great pattern interrupt. It's going to get you a lot more attention than not sharing it. So don't wait for it.
Okay, let's move on. So let's discuss trends. What is a trend you see that's hopefully not AI, but if it is, yeah, then that's what you're going to discuss. What's a trend you see um, that people should follow more closely, and
So,
like why we should pay attention to that trend?
so this trend has been coming for a while now. I think the inbound SDR role is dying. It's probably dead at a lot of companies already now. Just because the whole buying journey with inbound SDRs was, in my opinion, a complete waste of time. Where you had, somebody sort of, I don't know, filling a form, and then you're waiting like a week, and then get on an inbound SDR call. Have those qualification questions answered, and then being handed out to a junior AE and then a senior AE, and it takes almost 3 weeks, 4 weeks, can even take like forever. Like, people don't even come back to you until you're actually able to see the product. And what's interesting, what we're seeing is that the inbound SDR role is dying, but somebody's taking up that board. And it's primarily product marketers is what we're seeing. Because there was another issue with product marketing roles in a while where it was like they were just, sort of tactical content creators, creating enablement content, creating sort of whatever case studies and stuff that was basically just enabling other teams, but they never were co-owning revenue. With this change where the inbound SDRs are going away, but the PMMs are starting to co-own revenue. So like in my lens, it's sort of like, for example, the interactive demos, right? They're all sort of created by the product marketers. And there's all sorts of intelligent demo automation that's coming that basically allows them to almost just take control of the early demos. Um, so like, and then just basically hand off to the AE when somebody's serious. So you're literally taking care of all, the like for example, like, hey, what does the UI look like, and all those demos, the ones that AEs would have wasted their time on, that's being controlled by the PMMs, and that's another great thing because um, when PMMs created the content, this enablement content, right? They didn't have control over how it was used. So the salesperson might have interpreted it differently, or they just didn't sort of use it at all, right? But with all of these, whether that's interact demos or these qualification chatbots, they're able to feed the content in there and actually have the content be used the way they and they know the personas really well. They know like they have this perfect overlap with sales, marketing, product, right? So they know exactly what to target, which just which in a way is also sort of shortening the buying cycle, but also like obviously like avoiding the time that was wasted by the AEs in this sort of more with less sort of an age.
That's an interesting one. I haven't like heard anyone discussing that, but like the way you're explaining it makes sense. The only thing I'm not as sure about is whether PMMs have the time bandwidth, or even like if they're interested in, I don't know, like participating in calls, like or you say that like there's no need for them to participate in calls because there are all sorts of automations and like, AI and whatnot. They just have to be more present throughout the buyer journey.
Yeah, so they don't have to get on the calls. What I basically mean with PMMs right now is what they're doing is, so the end goal is to be able to see the product, right? The end goal is basically to generate what we call agentic qualified leads. So when we say agentic, it's more like a mix of sales qualified lead plus product qualified lead. So basically, they've seen the product and they've been qualified are probably the best sort of deals that you can sort of send to sales, right? So then basically, how do you make that happen, right? So one is obviously showing the product beforehand, showing the exact uh, right demo to the right person. So there's all sorts of like there are now these demo hubs available, and there's all sort of these focused workspaces where you can actually have like a buyer go in, evaluate the product, and not have them go to the parts which they're not interested in, but only the parts they're interested in. And then there's the whole evolution with AI agents happening, right? So right now we're at a point like for example, right now at Storylane, what we're doing is we have this thing called Lily, which is in beta right now. And basically, I don't know if you've ever come across the tech like Synthesia or HeyGen.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, right. So basically, you can talk to that person, right? But instead, this particular agent is trained on your best salesperson's call transcript. For example, the President's Club, top 1%, Gong transcript taken, trained on it. So they know how to sort of objection handle and answer questions. Then they're also trained on the product documentation. Then they're also trained on like the demo library, what all demos are, relevant for which use case or which personas or, which product or which different feature, right? And then basically the conversation starts. It's imagine like a 10-minute conversation. People can sort of talk, hey, give me a brief overview, and then there'll be like a demo that'll be surfaced there. So that's like our perspective, right? There's also like for example qualified, which is they have like this sort of text chatbot where you can actually just go in, start talking, like to the chatbot, and they will sort of answer it in a way that was very similar to like a lot of what the AI chatbots came. And now when you look at this entire sort of journey, right, it's all about the content being fed and how the person is able to answer those questions, right? And this is not a sort of goal to like replace a human. It's basically like when you think about this whole sort of new B2B buyers and all, right, they don't want to wait, to like get on a call or something. They want to evaluate the product first. And then when they feel they're ready, they want to talk to sales, right? So you're basically creating that sort of a setup. They come in, they can experience the demo, they can go talk to the chatbot or like the AI live person. And then basically, once they feel they're ready, they can just sort of go in and book a call, right? So your job ends there once they sort of book a call. And when they actually go in to the call, right, then they're like, they know about the UI, they know about the features, they know about like the specific things they have, but now they have like very deeper questions like, hey, how would it work with my, this other team, right? And like very technical questions, which is amazing because then the sales sort of just heads in directly into the meat of the conversation. So, I mean, like what I was coming to is like, it's not like PMs don't have to like sort of do the calls. They can just sort of train these sort of assets uh, from the knowledge base that they have available.
That's a great perspective. I like it. Thank you for sharing it with us. So let's move on to the problem. What problem do you see many GTM teams facing nowadays, and what might be the solution that is not obvious to most of these teams?
Most B2B marketing teams, I will say, so this is many hot takes, but I think this one's probably the big one in my mind right now. We were so used to attribution that everybody just started thinking that the linear path attribution is the way it is. So, I mean, I just talked to so many teams. They're all like, hey, how can you get like ROI in 3 months from this? What is the money that came from it? And I don't see this data in there, right? Everybody thought that, okay, somebody will just, a visitor will come in, click on a blog link, and then sort of go in and, sign up for your product. And it's just going to be that sort of a journey. And even back then, like I'm talking like the pre-COVID, right? It was like, if you looked at attribution models, like 50% you could never attribute ever, no matter what, how accurate you put first touch, you put last touch, you put whatever information, that 50% will always remain dark, right? And now that dark portion is increasing more and more because now people are sort of searching in their LLMs and they're searching, having conversation at conferences and events and all that, right? So attribution, like, has to be I mean, like, you need to rethink a little bit your perspective on it. That's what at least the way I am, at least my observation has been over the last 2 years. It's just that we live in a day and age where it's a multi-touch attribution journey. They're going to see a G2 review. They're going to talk to somebody on WhatsApp. They're going to get recommended somewhere on, like some community that you have no clue about, right? And I don't think it's fair or it's even worth your time to solve this whole attribution. There are new age attribution tools that can give you some level of clarity, but largely that is missing. So the best way is, one is, what we do is we do like three levels of check. One is just on like sort of just on a traffic level, like where is the traffic coming from, right? Like for example, on a high level, we know that okay, we get 3,000 visitors a month from LLMs, and we get some from LinkedIn and from Google search and all that. That's like one level of data point that okay, these are the places where the traffic is coming from, right? And people are coming to your website. The second thing is, in the demo form, if you're a sales-led org and if you're a PLG org, maybe add like, just mention or add like a form field which is like, how do you hear about us? And it should be a blank text field. It shouldn't be like a drop down in order for you to get additional rich context, right? You get that, you get a second layer of point, right? And there you have all sorts of mentions like, oh, a colleague recommended, oh, I've just been seeing you on LinkedIn for a while, or, just things that you wouldn't get in an attribution module. And then the third is you can sort of scan, like for example, the transcripts of, your salespeople, and then basically build an agentic workflow where you can just identify where if somebody mentions, oh, I heard about you, right? These are just some very directionally, they're not accurate in the sense like you won't know exactly where you're coming, but you'll know fairly that what your portfolio is, where people are coming and actually sort of taking this next step and decision. And as long as your sales team or like, your PLG revenue is sort of growing well and your, profit and loss statement looks good, you know, it's all good. And I think that's what, but it's such a difficult conversation to have because there's so many B2B teams are just not used to that. they still keep, chasing after that linear journey. Like they will work with an influencer and they're like, oh, we'll stop working with this influencer over, after 3 months, just because we didn't get a directly attributable lead, right? But there's this whole unattributable thing that you have absolutely no idea about. And you're just missing out and dismissing channels that way.
I agree with you. In general, I mean, it should be pretty obvious by now that in most cases, the journey, as much as we like it to be linear and non-fragmented, it's the exact opposite. It's non-linear, it's fragmented, it's messy, it's, all over the place. And what's not unfortunate, but I mean, unfortunately, marketers have to deal with this reality, right? And maybe you are savvy and you are experienced and like you can push back, but I can also see like how a marketer who has is not like at your level could find it very hard to explain to their, I don't know, CEO, CMO, CFO, whomever, their board that, you know what, like, yeah, I can't explain how we should invest in that initiative because my attribution software or our current setup can't like support me in like proving ROI. It's a hard discussion, right? So um, I don't know. I can understand, I mean, why marketers find it so difficult to, justify these things and like have these conversations.
Yeah, that's fair. I think one thing that marketers maybe can sort of tackle this, I would say, is own revenue and treat the portfolio like a portfolio, basically. Like, you're a fund manager, and your goal when you are chatting with your CEO is that, okay, the company is going to grow, whether you're there or not there, right? And they'll keep adding revenue, but what additional revenue are you able to add to that portfolio with these additional investments, right? And the end goal is that, okay, let's say, for example, you need to, I don't know, hit 5 million ARR, right? And, if without marketing, they would have anyway reached 3.5, right? Showing that, okay, we are able to get the additional 1.5 million ARR, right? It's a tough conversation, but it is a very real conversation that now marketing leaders and CEOs need to have. Most often, I mean, you're 100% right. It's the CEOs that's the difficult bit, like convincing them to sort of be okay with this. But I think it's just that, yeah, like uh, you have to own revenue 100%. Like, sure, you don't have full control over it, but you do have quite a big share of sort of contribution to it. So own the revenue, have the conversation, and sort of figure out some sort of a middle ground there. I think just if you own the revenue, if you're able to show the impact, that in itself will solve some of these problems. Like, I mean, another example, for example, is like your previous company, Minutia, right? Like, I know you from that company. I've never visited your website, but I used to see you so much in the Superpaths community and like the webinars and emails, right? And I think there was even this one time where somebody, I think it was some company, they were looking for, services, and I'm like, oh, you could look at, this and Minutia and all of the others. And it was just that, right? Never visited your site, but I just knew it and heard a couple of your podcasts and everything. And it's just, how do you attribute that, right? So I think these examples are also just, yeah, like maybe there's some CEO education that needs to happen on a global level, but that's a discussion for some other point.
I agree with you. And in fact, that's I think what you're trying to do, right? You want to create this like mental availability so that such that you're part of the conversation. That's always the goal. Now with Restart as well, and I'm assuming with Storyline, that's a big part of what you're trying to do. We just want to be part of the conversation, regardless of whether someone decides to, go with us or any other provider at this point. Um, and I don't know, every company has a different playbook on how to achieve that, right? Um, anyway, I will let's switch gears and move on to the next question, which is the last one also, which is regarding a problem. No, sorry, which is regarding a growth tactic or experiment that you ran. What was the thought process behind it, and what were the results?
Yeah, I can share about this was one of our biggest growth wins last year. Here was an experiment we labeled called demo-led SEO. And it was basically, yeah, so what we did was we had our, so we were driving search traffic. So, I mean, just for context, Storylane has a PLG arm and there's a SLG motion that's happening, right? So SLG is obviously sort of, sales led. So we're building leads for it. And there's some that happens from product led sales. But there's also a big PLG portion, right? For anybody who's worked in PLG, like if you need to make it work, you just need a shit ton of traffic, relevant traffic. And then you have your conversion levers sort of going in and you just do it. So blog traffic, I think we invested about 2, 3 years into blogs and it was just growing very slowly. Like, okay, 5,000 a month to 10,000 a month, 10,000 to 15,000 a month, year over year. It was very slow. And everything that was happening in like the whole world of Google, right? It was just very, the cost to content was, well, it is pretty much zero now. And everybody was creating fairly great content, right? So what's your mode to be able to sustain your rankings, right? So we wanted to figure out a way, like my CEO came to me saying that, hey, is there an experiment we can run where we grow our traffic from, let's say, 10,000 a month to 100,000 a month by the end of the year, right? And one hypothesis we had was, what if we created content, but the content actually lived inside an interactive demo? So think of it like, for example, like I told you, we sell to marketing and pre-sales. We looked at clusters within, let's say, for example, marketing, or like, hey, like, how do I, create a custom filter in Google Analytics, for example, right? Or for sales, it could be something like, how do I merge a custom field in Salesforce or or HubSpot or whatever, right? And there were all of these, like a bunch of queries, and there was a huge cluster that we could do. And what we did was, when we created these pages had no text. It was just an interactive demo showing how it worked. So, for example, how to merge a custom field in Salesforce, it was like, step by step tutorial. And like, in case you don't know what an interactive demo looks like, it's basically like product screens and like the beacons, which are sort of moving. It's like you're sort of inside the product. It looks and feels exactly like a product, but you're being guided like the next step. And like our hypothesis for this experiment was that, does Google really need text to be able to rank? If you're able to reduce time to value for the user. So we were competing against pages which had maybe like a 10-minute read, and we were reducing it down to a 1-minute read with a very different page experience. We tried it out with 100 pages and it was just insane. I think it was like 2 out of the 5 pages were ranking in position number one, and then the others were ranking in like the top 10 and all of that. So we scaled it from 100 pages to about 3,000 pages over the course of the year. And I think in like 6 months, we grew our traffic from 20,000 a month to 250,000 traffic a month. And it wasn't just traffic, it wasn't just garbage traffic. It was, uh, we tripled our PLG revenue. We Actually, that was a surprise. We actually got some enterprise deals also out of it, because there were all of these people who were like looking, like they were all users of Salesforce, HubSpot, and all that, right? And they basically came in, they saw the product, and like our page was also like that. Like, for example, it was like we had like sort of like a CTA hello bar sort of thing at the top. And then there's the headline, like how to merge a custom field in Salesforce. And then there was like the demo modal. And then that's it. That was the page. So they saw it, and then they saw the CTA for Storylane, they signed up and all of that. And I think what we just realized was that Google really liked the whole interactivity to it. And it was like, I think when we looked at the numbers, it was like our bounce rate, uh, I think, I'm trying to remember, but I think like our our time on page reduced quite a bit. Our page engagement, I think, went from, so the average page engagement is around, I think, like what we looked at the benchmark, it was like, I think 25% or something on this page, because of the interactivity and all. It was like 70, 75%. The time on page reduced from, like, the average is about a minute, it reduced down to 15 seconds. The bounce rate reduced quite a bit. So like the average bounce rate of a page is around 70% of a text-based blog post. For this demo-led pages, it was like 30%. And I think Google really liked that. So it continues to do that. We've actually scaled it to about 7,000 pages. We're doing pretty well. I think right now, 1 out of the 10 Oh, sorry, one out of the 5 pages ranks at number one. And I think more than half of the pages rank in the first 10. And it was just like one of our biggest experiments last year.
That's a big one, and well done. Do you see whether these pages also receive traffic from LLMs?
They do. Yeah,
They
they do.
do. That's interesting. Okay, that's an interesting one. We will make sure to drop the. I guess there is a subfolder where you keep these pages. We will make sure to drop that in the show notes. I think I've read somewhere about this particular strategy, or however you want to call it, and I found it really fascinating that you approached it, and very creative that you approached it that way. Not sure how easy it was to scale it, because I'm assuming it's a lot of work. Plus, you need to have access to all these tools and whatnot. But that's something you don't get to hear every day. So kudos to you and your team for executing on that.
Thank you. Yeah, the ops is it's just more of like we worked with a bunch of contractors, external contractors to help us out.
Yeah.
But once you, it's very process driven. Once you have an understanding of a tool, right? Whether that's you find somebody who knows how to use Salesforce, they can go in and create like 300 pages very instantly because like creating the demos is really fast. The pages were all templatized. There wasn't much. It was just the
Yes.
time to go in and create those. So we created that sort of, but the ops process was once it was done, it was super scalable. So we went from 2 to 3 to 5 external contractors.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So, Madhav, I want to be respectful of your time, and so I guess we can wrap here, and we can close this. Final question slash CTA. Where can people find out more about you, Storylane? Get in touch, say hi.
Yeah, you can like I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You can just find me there. And Storyline, you can just type in Storyline in LLM, Google, wherever, or just go to storyline.com.
Is traffic from LLMs also increasing?
Yeah, it is. And we're actually trying to figure out a playbook for it. I have been digging quite a bit over the last 3 months because it was just so surprising. Like in the demo forms, we were seeing like people like, oh, found it through Perplexity, found it through ChatGPT and all of that. Um, so yeah, I mean, like now there are ways where you can sort of be able to rank higher on it. It just requires more focused effort. We're actually the traditional SEO, we've just almost pretty much winded that one down. But like the developed SEO and the LLM SEO is where we're investing heavily.
Okay. That's great. Madhav, that was great. We heard things that, we don't get to hear every day. So thank you very much. And yeah, have a great day.
Thank you so much.